All right, so what we're gonna take a look at this week is lesson two, just doing some basic animation stuff. We're gonna take a still image and an Illustrator file and actually take a look at how we can do some editing right within After Effects. And then we're gonna do something called pre-comp, which is basically where we're gonna take a couple different layers and make them act as one piece for animation purposes. So we're gonna kind of take a look a little bit more of like what we did last week and kind of extend off that a little bit. And then once we're done, you're going to output this thing out as an MP4 and email it to me. And then there's a little bit of an extension project this week. You're gonna do a little bit of digging for assets on the internet. I know I showed you guys some of those existing ones on that section I have in Blackboard. So you're gonna kind of dig around and see if you can find anything else. I like doing this for you guys just so you can kind of start getting a sense of like being able to find stuff to build projects on your own. This is gonna be important because next week we're gonna start in on the first project. So what I wanna take a look at first is Blackboard, so you can see underneath announcements. Here's last week and a link to this video, that session that's also been uploaded to the YouTube channel. So again, we'll be, as soon as these lessons are done, they'll be posted up for you and ready to go. If you take a look under assignments, that's where we're going to find the stuff for this week. So here we are, lesson two, creating a basic animation using effects and presets. We're going to start with this. We'll come back to the asset collection and sharing piece at the end of the lesson. This is a pretty quick lesson today. There's really not a whole ton to it. It's just kind of expanding on what we looked at from last week. So what I want to do is hit that lesson two assets, and that's going to go into my downloads folder. Let me just go ahead and grab that, and I got a copy. Let me just quick replace it. And inside the folder, there's just a couple of things we're working with. This JPEG that will act as a background, and then this logo that we'll use for kind of animating. We'll add some text to it, that type of thing. So what I want to do first is I'm going to jump into After Effects. Also keep in mind too, you guys are going to probably want to keep Media Encoder up and running, just so that once you're done that you don't have to wait for it to load. I generally just launch them both at the same time. What we're going to be doing is, instead of just dragging stuff in, we're going to take a look this week at creating a new empty composition. So basically creating like a new blank file to work off of. There's a bunch of presets that exist in After Effects. They're all specific to screen sizes. So it's whether it's like old school like tube TV sizing, if it's 16:9, if it's different resolution, that type of thing. So that's what we'll kind of be paying attention to as we create our new images. I'm going to close this home screen because it always just takes me into a blank untitled project, and that's what I want to start from here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at this new composition, and I'm going to give this thing a name. I'll just call this thing lesson two, my last name right away, just so I'm saving it and kind of working with what I need. Now from this box up here, there's a bunch of drop downs. So we've got some standard definition stuff, high definition stuff, ultra high definition 4K and 8K on there. We're just going to be working off a smaller size for right now. The one I want to work at is the NTSC D1. So if you click on that, it shows you 720 by 486, lower resolution. It's not a 16:9, it's a 4:3 basically. So if we're taking a look, our frame rate locks in at 29.7, so 30 frames per second, exactly where we want it. And for duration, I'm going to set this to 3 seconds. So you can just go in, remember these are frames, these are seconds, these are minutes, these are hours. So I'll click OK, and that gives me my new blank comp to start dropping my pieces in. Now, instead of grabbing everything and dragging in it all at once, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag them in one at a time. I'm going to throw my, and I close my effects control because I want to make sure I'm on my project window. I'm going to grab my JPEG and slide this over. And then I also have this AI file. I'm going to drop this in separately because it's going to prompt me. It's going to ask me, how do I want to bring this in? Either as footage or as a composition. Because I want to edit this, I want it to drop in as a composition. And then here for my size, layer, document size, I'll drop it in at document size and click OK. And notice that it brings it in as kind of a separate piece. Here's my layers, and they're all existing right inside this logo. So once we get all our pieces in there, we've got everything assembled, it's dropped in correctly. What I want to do is drop in my actual objects and start kind of playing around with my formatting a little bit. So first I'm going to grab this Paris River JPEG and drag it down into my timeline, and there it is. And you can see this thing is oversized. I can kind of click and drag with my regular selection tool. If I grab up to a corner, I can kind of start clicking and dragging to scale it. Remember, hold your shift key anytime you're scaling anything, just so that it transforms proportionally. This thing's pretty huge. I could probably zoom out on this as I'm dragging. I'm just going to kind of reset a couple because I don't want to fully shrink this. I still want to work with a little bit of the space. So here's what the whole image looks like. And I'll scale up a little bit. I'm going to grab that boat, and maybe I can go on a little bit more. There we go, and a little bit of the statue. I think that looks good right there. So I'm going to frame it in just about like that. And then I'm also going to grab that Destinations logo. Notice I'm grabbing the composition one. I can tell it's a comp because it's got that little circle, square, triangle logo. I'm not grabbing individual layers, I'm just grabbing that whole piece, and I'm going to stack it above that so that I can see that logo. Now, because this thing is a comp, I can double click on it, and it takes me into a whole separate edit window that'll allow me to take a look at all the different pieces. So here I've got the type that wraps around the edge, I've got the globe logo, and then I have this crop area. This crop area is just basically showing the outer edge of the box. I can just go ahead and turn that one off, but that's giving me all the art that's inside that Illustrator file. Now, I'm not locked into just working with this. I can also add pieces into a comp, and that's what I want to do. I'm going to grab my type tool up at the top, and I'm just going to click once, and I'll type in Travel Europe. Yours may have remembered the last settings you used the last time you opened After Effects. I'm just going to set whatever font you want to use is fine. I'm going to highlight everything. I'm going to shrink this down just a little bit. I'll grab my move tool and kind of slide it over. And then for the color, I can double click and I'll just grab something that's kind of close to whatever that edge is there. But basically just want to get some text in that area. And again, once I have that object open, it's going to show me all those options underneath the character panel. Now what I want to do is I want to apply some effects to this, but what I want to do is I want to apply effects to the entire thing. I don't want to just put it on this Travel Europe. I want to put it on everything. And because I'm in a comp, I would have to apply it individually. If I close this and just go back into this main comp, I now see my Travel Europe text. But what I can do is I can apply an effect across everything. So I'll jump into effects and presets. And if I go into my little search box here, I'm gonna look for a drop shadow. Oh, actually, you know, let's do it this way. Instead of dropping it in that way, let's take a look under our effects menu. So with this selected and highlighted, underneath effect, I can actually get to things under there too. So if I go to like effect perspective, there's a bunch of different types that I can work with, lighting, camera tracking, that type of thing. I'm just gonna grab that drop shadow, and just like in Photoshop, it actually shows me all my settings. So if I wanted to like change my angle a little bit or soften it a little and bring it in a little bit closer, I can make all those adjustments right there. And this is a universal adjustment because I'm applying this to the entire comp, not just to individual layers within it. So that's the first thing. Second thing I want to do is I'm going to throw a color effect on this thing. I'm going to look for one called Color Emboss. There it is. It's just a stylizing thing. I can drag it right onto the layer. It applies it. And then I think the default settings are okay. But again, just like we saw before, if you want to turn things up or down, on the Color Emboss, there's my direction. If I want to emboss it in a different direction, the relief is kind of how intense it is. So I can turn that up or down. If I want to blend or turn the contrast up or down, I can adjust that way as well. So that looks good. I'm going to close this little dialog box right up here, the close button, just so I can get back into my project pane. So now I got my effects applied to this thing, and now I'm going to animate it. But what I want to do is I don't want to animate the entire thing. I want to kind of make this work in pieces. So I'm going to double click on that destinations logo on the comp, and it's going to show me all these different pieces here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this Travel Europe text, and if I click right on there, it highlights it. And then for my settings, there's one that I'm going to use called Bullet Train. It's a text specific one. You'll notice that if you don't have anything in here, it kind of shows you all different styles. So like if I wanted to work with text, different options there. If I wanted to work in distortions, all that different thing. So you don't always have to know the names of these. I'm going to grab this Bullet Train and I'm going to drag it right on top of that object. And now if you take a look, it's gone. I'm not seeing anything. But if I scrub forward, it's showing me kind of how it all like slides into place, and it looks like by about 20 frames or so, it's fully in. Now, I don't want this to happen at this point though. What I'm going to do is I'm going to undo that effect. I'm going to slide this scrubber. I'm going to go over to, let's go to about 1 second and 10 frames. Let's go to about here. Now, because I moved my slider over, if I drag it over here, it'll now start that effect at that point. So now nothing happens, and then it kicks the effect in. So I'm going to kind of play with my timing a little bit by adjusting where this time scrubber is. So far, so good. That making sense? So usually by about the 2-second mark, it's fully in. All right, so next thing I want to do is I want to make a bunch of stuff happen, but I want it to happen to two pieces. So here I got this rotated type in this globe. I want to take these two things and I want effects to happen to them both at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that rotated type. I'm going to hold my shift key and click on my globe. So now they're both highlighted. And what I can do is I can go to my layers menu, or I can just right click and I can do this pre-compose thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call this the logo. And now I've got a comp inside of a comp. So if I double click, now it's all there. So you see how it's kind of nesting things together? So I'm going to close that. Now that this is all together, it's locked in as almost like a single frame. Now what I'm going to do is apply another effect to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my slider is all the way back at 0. And then I'm going to look for something called vapor animation. So, spelling it right will help. I have this dissolve vapor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it onto that logo right here. And now if I scrub forward, it kind of blends in. And then the second part of the animation comes through. So far, so good. That making sense? Any questions on anything? And again, if you need to adjust any of these pieces in here, it's just a matter of scrubbing forward, selecting the object, then making any changes to it. So now that that's done, I'm going to close that out, and we're going to take a look at adjusting this whole thing, and I'll just play this forward first. Let me hit my space bar. It might take a second to render this. All right, so next thing we're gonna take a look at is now that this is rendered, it's playing through, it's doing what I want it to. I want to kind of adjust my transparency on this thing. I want to kind of take a look at the opacity. But what I want to do is I want it to kind of fade over time. I don't want it to just be fully at 100% or at 20% or anywhere in between. I want to kind of balance those out a little bit. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to stop my animation and scrub back to the 0-second mark. I'm not seeing anything. That's cool. So what I want to do is I'm going to go to my 2-second and 24 frame mark, like right up about here. And at that point, I'm going to press T. That reveals my opacity for my destinations logo layer, which is the one I have selected. And now underneath opacity, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check this little stopwatch. At this point, I want it to be fully opaque, like I want to see the whole thing. So now if I scrub backwards and I go back to the very beginning, I'm going to check this. And again, it's already pre-checked. If I scrub this down to maybe like 40% or so, now as I scrub forward, it's not just going to fade in with the effects, it's also going to fade in the opacity. So you can see as I scrub forward, you can kind of see it becomes more and more opaque, less transparent. So you can see right in here, I'm really picking it up. And again, I'm controlling that just with that T and checking that little stopwatch. That's going to allow me to control things to happen over time. So now that I have that done, we've seen now like just working off a basic background, a still image. That's something you can totally do in After Effects. It's really more about like bringing in alternate pieces and then applying effects, applying animation, applying transitions with timing by using that little stopwatch icon. And now that it's doing what I want it to do, that's exactly it. I'm going to stop and save this thing. Okay, that looks good. And I'm just going to save it right on my desktop. And that's fine. I'll just give it an untitled name right now. Now remember, you're not giving me the AEP file. You need to actually get this thing sent out to me. You need to render it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to composition and we're going to add this thing to the media encoder queue. So I click on that. I'm going to jump into the encoder. It might take a second for it to fully transfer over. See if it popped in yet. There we go. So there it is, lesson 2. H.264 is good. Now remember, my preset matters because I'm not doing a full HD on this. This is one that I'm doing with a slightly smaller size. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have it match the source. I'm going to have it identify what size the object is and then just match what I have it built in. for that frame rate. And then I'm going to have it saved out into, and I'm going to click where I want it. I'm going to have it sent right into my desktop. It's L2 Brzezinski. Because it's an H.264, it'll save it as an MP4. So all I got to do is hit play, and it's going to find that file. It's matching that source out. This should render really quickly for you guys because this is a really simple file. And now that I'm done, here's my file on my desktop. I can double click it. Should pull up into my QuickTime. Notice my size is right. It rendered out, matched the size of the document. There's my animation, all my effects, everything's ready to go. That is what you're going to email me, your finished MP4 file. Any questions on anything you guys just saw? Importing your files, double clicking on the comp to view the layers, making a pre-comp, adding in the effects, adding in the transitions, and rendering out. So again, like we're kind of starting slow with this stuff. Next week, we're going to jump into something a little bit more complex. Next week, we're going to take a look at doing more with text animation, and that's going to kind of put us in a good spot to actually try and build one of these things out from scratch ourselves. So before I have you guys do that, and before I'm going to concern you with building out your own specific project, like that isn't just a bunch of pre-started stuff, what I'm going to have you guys do is a little bit of asset research. So let me close all this out and jump back into the content. Take a look under assignments. We're in lesson 2. The assignment for this week, in addition to wrapping up the tutorial and sending me over the MP4 file, is I need you to dig around and do a little bit of internet research, essentially. There's a ton of assets that are available through the After Effects community. There's some free sites, there's some pay sites. What I want you guys to do is focus primarily on the free sites. I don't want anyone to have to pay for anything. There's a ton of royalty-free, and royalty-free is the key word there. Different assets that you guys can be using. So what I want you to do is send me 3 links along with a description of what it is. One for video assets, stuff that you can find free video footage, because that's going to be really helpful, especially when we get into kind of some of our other projects. We're going to have a couple of tiers of them. Second thing is plugins. Plugins are different effects or processes that kind of work on your existing video. So like how we saw some of the stuff like the dissolve and the bullet train and all that today, there's actually additional effects that community developers can create and make available for you to add as a plugin into After Effects. This is common for Photoshop as well. Like if you were building brushes, if you were building additional like script things for styling. So that's another one to do. Third thing is overlays. They add depth or range and they process effects. So video plugins, video assets, plugins, overlays. Another thing too, if you're not finding anything that you're super excited about, that's really, really helpful is audio assets. Royalty-free audio makes a huge difference. YouTube, when I'm done with this stuff, I save these lessons, I have them as an MP4, I upload on my YouTube channel. YouTube checks everything I do to make sure that I'm not using any stuff that's got copyright infringement issues. So it'll scan your music, it'll scan your video. If there's any problems with anything, it rejects it and won't allow you to upload it. So that's why I asked that you guys use royalty-free stuff so that when you're done, you can actually post your work as part of your portfolio on like different, video hosting sites. So for next week, you're going to send me the lesson 2 MP4 file, and then you're going to email me those 3 links that you found with a quick description. And then stuff that I have, I'll be adding into that assets piece along the left-hand side and collaborate so that we can kind of build up that library so you guys can kind of find more stuff there. And just, I think the more the merrier when it comes to find different things, just so that you're not kind of stuck using the same resources over and over again. Any questions? Anything jumping out, you guys? All right, so that's what I got for you for this week. If you have any questions as you're working, remember you can feel free to hit me on Google Hangouts, send me an email. Any of that stuff works. If you're going to jump in during office hours, remember those run Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 12 till 1. Otherwise, if you don't have any questions, that's all I got for you guys, and I will see you next week.